So we're painting a pastoral scene today, and you can see that sometimes you forget to turn on the microphone. So you can see that the person talking to you up in the little box is not the same person who's speaking to you now. So I'm looking at the little pastoral scene, and we'll bring it up. This is what we'll be painting. So just on my pencil, I am roughly sketching in a little bit of the drawing. I'm not going too far or make it too complicated, but I'm sketching in a little bit of where the horizon is. There are a couple of little mountain ranges. There's a little mountain maybe in the middle there, and there's maybe a little mountain range that kind of runs toward the center on this side. There's also a little house that exists right there in our scene. So I'm just lightly sketching in, and I keep checking. If you're watching the video above, I'm looking over at my computer monitor, so I can keep checking sort of where that little house lives. You'll see later on, once we do a video cut, I move this house. I'm going to erase it here in just a bit and move it somewhere else. So you can see I'm using my Princeton Snap natural brush, about a number 10 round brush. It's a great one. I really like it. It's the same that you have in your kit. So I'm mixing up a little bit of color now is what I'm doing. And now I'm trying to remember all of the steps that I'm doing just out of the view of the camera. This is what I'm doing next. So I'm mixing up a little bit of color for the sky. I'm using a little cobalt blue. You might choose a little cerulean because it's a little bit of a cooler blue for your sky. We're going to paint it in a little bit stronger at the top and kind of let it move down. You see I've got my water bottle now, and I'm going to spritz the sky a little bit, not to make it wet entirely like I might do with a brush, but I'm just trying to spritz little droplets onto it so that as I paint with my sky color, can you sort of see some of those droplets forming there? As I paint in with my sky color, they'll catch some of those droplets a little bit, and that'll allow the paint to fuzz out just a little bit. Where the paint meets the little water droplets, it'll want to sort of pull that paint in and kind of fuzz it out. I'm sort of using the side of my brush. As you can see, I'm looking at my reference image, but I'm not being too concerned. I'm just trying to find the big shapes is my big concern. So the big shapes of blue sky, the big shapes of white clouds. I'm trying to paint those shapes in, but not be so meticulous that I'm trying to copy the sky that I see in my reference. But I'm letting a little bit of the watercolor do what the watercolor does, and let it blend around and kind of help me create those puffy soft clouds. There's a big white cloud there in the middle of this section, and so I'm trying to leave some sections of my sky white. Don't forget to leave the white of the page sometimes. It's a way to keep your, you can see I'm showing you that I'm holding my brush to the side, as opposed to holding it like a pencil or holding it like we hold a paintbrush sometimes. Kind of holding it to the side so I can let it scumble and scrunch in there. Now I'm sort of holding my brush a little bit like I normally would. I've added more water to it so that I can thin that paint out some near the horizon, sort of where the sky meets those mountains there. I want a little bit of paler color down there as the sky sort of moves down. I'm going back in with a little bit of a stronger color. Sometimes I'm going straight into the paint tray and pulling out almost that thickest version of the paint that I can muster. Sometimes I mix it in the palette a little bit too before I come in. Sometimes I go in just with a little bit of clear water, which is what I'm doing right now, to sort of soften some of those transitions. Almost always your paint is going to dry, particularly if you have water on the page. Your paint is always going to dry lighter. So sometimes you can afford to bring a little bit stronger color over into your work, because it's going to, if it's a little bit stronger paint, you'll maintain a little bit stronger color, but it's always going to dry a little bit lighter. What I'm saying now is I've taken a paper towel that I had lying around, and I've sort of wrinkled it up to kind of create some cloud shapes. And so now that my paint is a little bit dry, I'm also coming in over the clouds that I've already painted in order to give myself a little bit of a kind of a soft version. Don't use a paper towel that has a bunch of purple paint in it, because you're going to get a little bit of purple in your clouds, and that might be just fine. What I'm doing now is I'm cleaning off that tape. If you have a little bit of tape or a little bit of paint on the outside, it's going to, the water in your paper is going to want to draw that paint back in. And so, after I've done kind of a wet technique, often I want to go back and, clean off that, your tape, so that it doesn't try to draw that color back into your work and give you, kind of messy edges, out toward the side. So here I am using my my paper towel with a little bit of purple in it, and oh, look what I've done. I put some purple. I put some purple in my sky. I'm trying to scrub it out a little bit right now, which is not working. I didn't have another paper towel handy, and I had already started, so I decided that I was going to just work with it. You can see me scrubbing a little bit with a wood pulp paper like we've got. You can scrub a little bit, but not very much. So lifting a lot of paint, if you kind of want to scrub back up and get some color. Oh, look, the way to fix it is put a little more blue in there, a little more sky, and perhaps I can create another kind of a striation of cloud and let that work for me. So I think if I look at the finished work, I was able to do that a little bit. I'm looking right at you now. Clearly I'm making some sort of point. That's a very oh, I turned off part of it so that my face didn't look quite as orange, but it took a lot of the light off of my page, and so I decided to put it back. And now I'm probably making some stupid joke like I'm trying to do right now. So what we're doing right now is giving a little bit of dry time to our sky, and as we think about letting the sky dry, it might be a good time to think about beginning to paint in our foreground. And oh, there it is. I have decided that I didn't want that part of the sky, or that part of the that house. I needed it to be a little further over, and maybe break that line just a little bit more. So I'm redrawing in the house. So remember, it's your world, and you are the world creator here. So if you decide you want to move that house, that's completely up to you. I recommend you do so. So now I'm just coming in with some clear water down in the foreground. Now that I've gotten the house clearly where it was supposed to be, I'm bringing some clear water into the foreground, the meadow that we're painting in. I'm going to do a wet in wet technique, which we've practiced a little bit before. But I'm bringing wet in wet because I want it to be nice and soft. I want some colors of my meadow to sort of blend together a little bit. So I'm working on, I think I'm looking at sort of a sap green color, and I think what I'm telling you when I look straight into the camera, I'm saying I have a little bit, oh look, I have a little bit of yellow already in my palette. And so it didn't matter, the yellow and the green, they're colors that are, the green color is created from my yellow, so it doesn't matter. It brings a little bit of that yellow in, which serves to soften the green. I'm using a brush in a standard way. I'm adding a little bit of a deeper green. Maybe you want that Viridian green to come in, which is a little bit bluer, but it's also a little deeper. I'm also bringing in some yellow ochre just to get a little color variation in the meadow there, as we know, it's likely to do. But again, remember that even though it's sort of, I got some streaky kind of striations of color that don't seem to, kind of be playing nicely together, give it a bit, because it's going to, because it's wet, those colors are going to blend together. So I brought my my t-shirt, my tissue there, so that I can blot off the paint as I'm working it. Sometimes you don't want a brush that's so full of water. If you dab it off a little bit, you'll get a little bit stronger color that can go onto the page. Or if you're lifting and you want to lift some paint, you can do that too by drying out your brush just a little bit. I'm bringing in a little bit stronger color here. This could be Viridian. It might be a Hooker's green, or it could be a mixture that I've made with the sap green and perhaps a little bit of ultramarine blue. You can bring that in there. I know that right here at the base of this mountain, kind of right at the horizon, there's a sort of a grove of trees in my reference photo, and so I know it gets darker there, and I'm really looking for some contrast. Again, the shapes that we'll paint in later on, I'm not looking for anything that is so recognizable in terms of actual silhouette of the whatever it is, a tree or whatever. I'm looking for soft shapes here because they're off in the distance. I want to give myself a little bit of the notion of atmospheric perspective. I wonder what that guy is saying in the video, because he's talking the whole time. We just can't hear him. So in that mountain range, I have taken my green color for the mountain. I'm sort of scumbling in the edge so it's not sort of such a smooth edge on the top of my mountain there. You see, because both those areas of paint are wet, they blend together nicely. Now, where my two areas of the meadow meets that mountain, I know that they're not right next to each other, and so I want to keep a little bit of a harder edge there. I'm bringing in, so what I did was that with that kind of mountain color, I took my green, I added a little bit of red to it, the permanent red or alizarin crimson, or it looks like the camera stopped. It skipped there for a second. I put a little bit of the red in there to dull down that green color just a little bit. I know that red and green are complementary colors, so I can neutralize that green color a little bit. And I'm leaving a little bit of white space right there in the middle because that's where we have there's a little stone wall, I think, that lives in our little world there. Oh, I put a little bit of brown there. It was maybe a little bit too strong right out of the gate, and so I decided to blend that out just a tiny bit. So I'm going to speed up probably here for a second. I'm again bringing some darker color in along that fence line, or along where the horizon is, because I want to give some contrast and some distance. And because it's still so wet, that's why those colors are still blending together so nicely. And that'll provide a nice base for when I want to come back and be a little more precise with my shapes and get some edges in there. I can use a little less water and a little stronger paint. Okay, so I'm putting in a little bit of darker trees there. I have still a little bit of water because I want to get to sort of the fuzziness of the trees that might be in the background a little bit. But here I'm painting in the fence. I want it to be a little bit of a dark color. I feel like that's a little too dark, so I brought some water back over so that I could sort of bring that across, thin that across. And thin that out a little bit. You can see every once in a while I kind of blot off on my towel there, so that I can get a little bit of color, but not so strong, so that it's nice and soft and fuzzy. You can see I'm bringing some regular water over and just softening those edges from where where my boy, that camera keeps freezing every once in a while, doesn't it? Up there. I think it's as the hard drive spins up, it slows me down. So I did some softer edges. I brought some water back over, maybe a little bit of that green to soften the edge between the base of the that house and where the ground is, so that it's not such a hard edge. Maybe it seems like there's grass covering. So I'm coming back in with a little bit of darker color, just to create a little bit of more color variation in my meadow there. So you see I've got a little bit darker color, and the color's a little stronger, a little bit less water now, so that I can begin to build up a layer of a little bit stronger color there. You see that kind of provides me a little bit with a sense of depth. Now I'm painting a little bit of a brown color on the face of the mountain there. Again, I'm looking at my reference photo and seeing that there's a little bit of color variation, maybe where there's not so much vegetation up there. Not so much, green grass or trees or whatever. And so it also provides a little bit of texture up there as well. So now I've switched to a smaller brush. I'm going to do some detail in my trees, and I'm going in with a darker version of the green. I've taken my sap green, maybe a little bit of my viridian or phthalo green, and I've added a little bit of ultramarine blue to it, and that really deepens that color, and it allows me to provide what would be the shadow, or the deeper bits. So because I'm using a little bit smaller brush, I can be a little bit more precise about it, and I'm not using quite as much water, and it's on a dry surface, so I'm not going to into wet anymore. I'm going with relatively paint with a little bit of body to it, kind of in between our milk and honey version of paint consistency. And there you see I add even a little bit more of that ultramarine blue, so that I could get a little bit deeper color in those shadows. I'm painting in just a little bit of vegetation there, along the face of that little mountain or hill region there. Now I'm painting again my fence a little bit. I'm coming in with a little grayer, and I'm scumbling in just a little bit. This is a little stone house that's out there, so I'm scumbling in a little bit of a gray brown with either some Van Dyke brown or my raw umber or my burnt umber. Now I'm going to paint in some flowers, so I'm covering up my sky a little bit there, and I feel like I need to cover up my well, there I am. I'm kind of dropping in some little yellow flowers in there, which is a fine way to do it. And maybe you switch to the smaller brush perhaps, and now I'm looking for a way to, look, here's something behind me there. There we go. We're going to protect our little house as well, because I'm going to sort of spatter with my brush. I've got some thin paint. It's got a good amount of water in there, and you can see I can sort of spatter with my paintbrush. These Princeton snap brushes are pretty good. They let go of some color. So I've mixed up a little bit of that yellow, and I've grabbed my toothbrush, which is what we used to make our stars before. I think now I'm talking about mixing up a little bit of gouache, so that I have a little bit. Yeah, there's that little container I used last time. I'm going to put a tiny bit of gouache in the bottom of that, and if I mix some water and some of my yellow paint in with the gouache, kind of in a little bit of a thick way, because I want to change the color of that gouache to yellow. If you have some yellow gouache, that works too. But if you remember, gouache is an opaque watercolor, so it's going to kind of sit on top of my painting and be a little stronger color, rather than fading in like watercolor would. So there you go. There you go. So I've got some little flowers there. And now if I kind of move that other way, look, we've got a nice little meadow with some flowers. I've got a yellow thumb as well. And now I want to provide a little bit more structure. I want to show a little more structure. So I'm coming along with my pencil, just so that I can get a little bit of shadow line. I want to provide a little bit of a texture to my little rock wall that's there in the background. And it could be that if you have I'm dotting in some more flowers in the front. If you've got a pen and you have a kind of a light hand with your pen, you could come in with a pen as well. But remember, that's going to provide a lot of instant contrast. It might be a little too stark. So you might wait and come in once it's completely dry. I'm putting in a few red flowers there, but again, be careful. Don't do too many, because that's a color we haven't introduced anywhere else in the composition, and so they're definitely going to be they're going to get some focus in your painting. So that's something to be a little cautious about. And you can also come back over with a little bit more green too, to provide some undulation in the ground, to provide a little bit of some shadow lines. And if your yellow seems a little too strong, you can always come back in with your green back on top, and that can sort of mute down some of the yellow if it seems a little bit too strong to you. But there's our little pastoral painting. I hope you've enjoyed painting it, and we'll see you next time.